I never touched her. Please believe me." The cry ripped through the Dallas County Courthouse, raw and desperate. Maya Williams' voice shook with panic, her chest heaving as though the very air was choking her. She gripped the edge of the defendant's table, her knuckles pale against her dark skin, eyes wide with terror. The judge raised his gavel, order in the court, but the words barely mattered. The gallery had already turned into a storm. Murmurs burst into sneers, sneers into accusations. Monster, child beater, she should rot in prison. The whispers clawed at her ears. Strangers who knew nothing of her life now hurled stones of judgment. Maya's legs trembled under the weight of it. She wanted to disappear, but the thought of Lily, her little Lily, kept her standing. At the plaintiff's table, Veronica sat with her pearl necklace gleaming and her lips curled into a faint smile. She leaned toward Richard Hale, her voice low but sharp enough to cut. "The longer this drags on, the more she'll spin lies. We need this finished, Richard, for Lily's sake." Richard's jaw tightened, his gaze stayed fixed on Maya, but his ears drank in every poisonous word from Veronica. Mia saw it the way he leaned closer to Veronica, the way his shoulders stiffened as if armored by her influence. Panic rose in her throat like bile. "Richard," she cried out, her voice cracking into sobs. "Please look at me. You know me. 3 years I raised your daughter when you were too busy. I fed her, rocked her to sleep. I never hurt Lily. I never could for a fleeting second." Richard's eyes faltered. A memory flickered there. Lily's laughter. The sound of Maya's lullabies drifting through the halls of his Dallas estate. But then Veronica's hand slid over his, her nails pressing ever so gently, reminding him of the script she'd written. Richard turned back to Maya, his voice hard. "You betrayed my trust. My daughter had bruises on her face, and you expect me to believe that was an accident? You, of all people, dared to lay a hand on her." "No." Maya sobbed, her body shaking violently. "That's not true. That's not true. Peterson next door. Ask the cashier from the store we baked cookies that night." Lily was laughing. She was happy. Maya's breath caught like a knife in her lungs. "Richard, don't let her twist this. You know me. You've seen me with Lily for years. You know I could never." Her voice broke, dissolving into sobs. "Please, I beg you. Believe me enough." The prosecutor snapped, seizing the moment. "Your Honor, this display is nothing more than manipulation. We have photographs. We have testimony. The child's own father affirms the truth of this abuse. The evidence speaks louder than these theatrics." Maya shook her head violently, tears streaking down her face. "They're lies. The bruises are lies. I have receipts. I was at the store. I made dinner. Lily laughed all night. Ask the neighbors. Ask her teacher." The prosecutor stood, feeding the momentum Veronica craved. "Your Honor, these emotional outbursts are nothing but a smoke screen. The photographs don't lie. The child doesn't lie. This case is straightforward. The defense has no real evidence." "Daddy," Lily whispered, so faint that only the closest could hear. Richard bent his head. "It's okay. Sweetheart," he murmured. Veronica's hand tightened on his. Veronica's smile deepened. She had orchestrated everything. Before we continue, if you find this story interesting, make sure to subscribe. It really encourages us to keep bringing you more, every detail. The makeup-painted bruise, the whispered threats to Lily, the carefully planted doubts. Now all she needed was silence, a swift conviction, a guilty verdict that would erase Maya from their lives forever. Maya looked back toward Lily, who still clutched her bunny tightly. The little girl's shoulders shook, and for a moment, Mia hoped she saw defiance in those small hands. But then Veronica leaned down, whispering something into Lily's ear, and the child stilled. Her lawyer, Laura Bennett, touched her arm. "Maya, please sit. We'll get to the evidence when it's our turn." Maya's voice cracked. "Evidence doesn't matter when no one's listening." From the gallery, the murmur of insults continued. "Disgusting. Throw her in prison. How could she put her hands on a child?" Each word was another lash. She bowed her head, sobbing openly now. The tears burned, not just with sorrow, but with shame. She had never felt so small, so invisible, and yet so exposed. She raised her head once more, forcing her swollen eyes toward Richard. "Please," she whispered, "don't let her do this to me. To Lily, I swear on everything I am. I never hurt your daughter." But Richard did not answer. Veronica's hand still rested on his arm, a silent chain tethering him to her will. He kept his gaze fixed on the polished wood of the table, refusing to meet Maya's eyes. The judge called a recess. The gal's echo filled the chamber, final and cold. The bailiff gestured for Maya to sit back. She lowered herself onto the hard bench, her chest heaving, tears still spilling unchecked. Around her, people shifted and whispered. No one offered her a hand. No one spoke a word of comfort. To them, she was already condemned. Laura leaned closer, voice soft but firm. Well, fight. Don't lose yourself now. Maya pressed her palms together as if in prayer, her voice barely audible. If they believe her, I'll lose Lily forever. And then what's left of me? The recess ticked on. Richard stood, adjusting his cufflinks. Veronica glided beside him, graceful, victorious. She didn't even glance back at Maya as they left the courtroom. Mia sat alone, shaking, her whisper carrying only to herself. God, don't let them take her from me, not like this. No. When the gavel struck again, the trial resumed. And though Ma's tears had dried to salt on her cheeks, her spirit burned with the stubborn spark of a woman who refused to surrender. Even as the world condemned her, the courthouse air still clung to Maya's skin like smoke as she was led back into the small holding room. Her mind a whirl of whispers, insults, and Richard's unflinching silence. She buried her face in her hands. But what came back to her wasn't the gavel's echo. It was Lily's laughter, bright as a bell, from the mornings they used to share. Long before courtrooms and accusations, mornings had begun with the hiss of pancake batter meeting the skillet. Maya would rise before the sun, her modest apartment just a few streets away from the Hale mansion, and drive her dented old Chevy SUV through the still sleepy Dallas suburbs. She'd sing quietly to the radio old Motown songs her grandmother had loved, as if rehearsing for Lily's smiles. At the Hale kitchen, Lily would already be waiting, perched on a chair with her bunny in hand, her hair messy from sleep. Are we making hearts today? She'd ask, pointing to the mixing bowl. Yes, Mum. Maya would reply, pouring batter into shapes only a child's imagination could recognize. Hearts, stars, maybe even a bunny if I'm feeling fancy. No. The kitchen smelled of butter and maple syrup, and the sound of Lily's giggle when syrup dripped on her nose was enough to make the day worthwhile. Richard was rarely there. His seat at the long mahogany table sat empty, a folded newspaper marking his absence. He left early, chauffeured in a black Cadillac Escalade to meetings that never seemed to end. It hadn't always been like that. In the first months after his wife died, Richard had tried. Maya remembered evenings when he'd sit stiffly in the nursery, watching as she rocked Lily to sleep. He'd looked lost, like a man who had inherited a role he didn't know how to play. But as the years passed, his grief hardened into distance. His solution was to hire the best help, to build walls of convenience around his daughter. And that help had been Maya. She remembered the first time Lily called her mommy Maya. It was after a nightmare. The little girl trembling, clutching Maya's shirt as she whispered, I wish you were my mommy. Maya had frozen, tears pressing behind her eyes, but she hadn't corrected her. Instead, she'd kissed the child's hair and whispered, I've got you. Those memories were her truth, stronger than any evidence Veronica could conjure. But truth without a voice was as fragile as smoke in the wind. The door of the holding room opened. Laura Bennett entered, carrying a file stuffed with papers. Her heels clicked sharply against the linoleum floor, but her expression was softer now. Maya, she said gently, pulling up a chair. I need you to stay strong. The judge thinks you're unstable when you cry like that. I can't help it, Maya whispered. Her voice cracked. They think I hurt her, Laura. They think I hurt Lily. She pressed her fists against her chest. That child is my life. Maya, Laura sighed, sliding the file across the table. I've reviewed the receipts you gave me, they help. But they're not enough on their own. We'll need character witnesses, neighbors, teachers, someone to stand up for you. Maya's eyes darkened. They won't. They've already decided who I am. A maid, a black woman, easy to blame, easier to discard. Laura hesitated, then leaned forward. You're not wrong. The system favors money, reputation. Richard has both, but I've seen juries change their minds. I've seen children speak when adults fail them. Maya swallowed hard. Her thoughts drifted again to Lily. How the little girl used to tug at her apron while she baked cookies. How she'd squeal when Maya read dinosaur books with roaring voices. Would she speak? Would she tell the truth? Or had Veronica poisoned even that innocence? Meanwhile, at the Hale mansion, silence hung heavier than the crystal chandeliers. Lily sat at the breakfast table, pushing scrambled eggs across her plate. Richard scrolled through emails on his tablet, his coffee untouched. Veronica sipped her juice, her eyes on Lily like a hawk. Eat, darling, Veronica said smoothly. You need to be strong. Lily shook her head. I don't want eggs. Richard looked up, irritation flickering across his face. Lily, listen to Veronica. The child's eyes watered. Where's Maya? She whispered. Veronica's smile stiffened. She won't be coming back, sweetie, and it's better this way. Richard shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. Veronica reached across the table, her hand brushing his. The sooner this trial ends, the sooner Lily can heal. We need closure. Richard, closure. The word sat heavy on his chest. He remembered Maya's face in the courtroom. Tears streaming. A part of him had wanted to believe her, but Veronica's steady whisper in his ear drowned that voice. And what man, even one worth billions, could withstand the image of bruises on his daughter's face? Back in her small apartment, the one she hadn't set foot in for weeks since her arrest, Maya's belongings sat exactly as she'd left them. Lily's crayon drawings decorated the fridge. Stick figures labeled me and Maya, holding hands beneath a sun with too many rays. A stack of children's books lay on the coffee table, their corners worn from nightly readings, and on the couch, a blanket still held the faint scent of strawberry shampoo Lily's scent. Maya thought of that home as she sat in the holding cell, her tears drying to salt. She whispered to herself, almost a vow, I will not let her grow up thinking I left her. I will not let that woman take her from me. Laura gathered her papers. We'll regroup tomorrow. Try to rest. Rest. The word felt foreign. Mia leaned back against the cold cinder block wall and closed her eyes. She let herself remember Lily's laughter, the warmth of small arms around her neck, the whispered words that had once made her whole. I wish you were my mommy. For the first time since the trial began, a flicker of resolve cut through her despair. The world might call her a criminal, the whispers might brand her a monster. But Maya knew who she was, and she knew whose little heart still beat in rhythm with her own. If you feel Maya's pain, hit like and comment where you're watching from. Who knows? Someone nearby might be watching this story with you too. The next morning, the Dallas sun rose hard and hot, flooding the Hale estate with a light that seemed too sharp for the heaviness inside its walls. The mansion was a world of stone columns, manicured lawns, and endless glass windows that reflected the city's wealth. Yet despite its grandeur, it felt hollow, like a theater set where everyone played their parts, and no one believed the script. Richard Hale sat in his office at the far end of the house, a room lined with leather-bound books he never read, and awards from ventures he barely remembered winning. His laptop glowed with the morning's market reports, stock prices shifting in real time, a world where numbers spoke more clearly than people ever could. But his mind wasn't on the screen. It was on the words that had erupted in the courtroom the day before Maya's screams, her tears, her desperate pleas. He pinched the bridge of his nose, his coffee cooling untouched beside him. He hadn't slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the bruises on Lily's cheek. He told himself the photographs didn't lie, but then he heard Maya's voice. Richard, please look at me, please. A knock sounded at the office door. Come in, Richard called. Veronica stepped inside, her heels clicking softly against the oak floor. She was dressed perfectly as always, a cream blouse tucked neatly into a pencil skirt, pearls resting at her collarbone. She carried herself with the ease of a woman who knew her place in the spotlight. You didn't come to breakfast, she said gently, setting a glass of orange juice on his desk. Lily barely touched hers without you there. Richard leaned back, avoiding her eyes. She'll get used to it. Veronica tilted her head, studying him. You're troubled. If you're still here and enjoying the story, we'd love your support. Take a second to hit subscribe. It really means a lot. I just keep hearing her voice, Richard admitted. He hated the tremor in his tone, hated how much space Maya occupied in his thoughts. She swore she didn't hurt Lily. I've known her 3 years. Veronica, 3 years. Veronica's expression softened in a way that felt rehearsed. She touched his arm, her nails immaculate. She's manipulative, Richard. That's what guilty people do. They cry, they scream, they beg. You can't let her get into your head. Think about Lily. That child needs stability, not a dangerous maid confusing her. Dangerous. The words settled like a stone in Richard's chest. He wanted to believe it, but something in him resisted. He stood abruptly, moving toward the wide window that overlooked the gardens. Lily used to play there with Maya. He could still picture them chasing bubbles, Maya laughing freely as the child's small legs carried her across the grass. He had watched from this very window more than once, hidden behind the glass, telling himself he was too busy to join. I don't know, he muttered. Veronica approached, slipping her arms around his waist from behind. I do, she whispered. You hired her to help, and now she's trying to take more than her place. You've seen the evidence. She betrayed you, Richard, and she betrayed Lily. Her words coiled in his ears like smoke, suffocating the doubts before they could breathe. He exhaled slowly, nodding though the pit in his stomach deepened. Across the house, Lily sat on the floor of her room. Bunny clutched tight, her eyes fixed on the doorway. The room was filled with toys, dolls lined neatly on shelves. A dollhouse as tall as she was. But she played with none of them. Her small fingers twisted the bunny's ears until the stitching strained. "Daddy," she called softly. Richard appeared a moment later, his tie knotted, his expression wary. He crouched down to her level. "Yes, sweetheart. Is Maya coming back?" Richard's heart clenched. He swallowed, forcing the lie. "No, baby. Maz, Mia can't be here right now." Lily's lip trembled. "But she didn't hurt me." Richard froze. His eyes darted toward the hallway, half expecting Veronica to appear. He lowered his voice. "What do you mean?" "She never hurt me." Lily whispered fiercely. "Maya makes pancakes with hearts. Maya reads to me at night. She loves me." Her small chest heaved. "I don't want her to go." Richard stared at her, the world narrowing to the fragile child clutching her bunny. For one fleeting second, doubt roared through him. But then Veronica's voice echoed from downstairs. "Richard, we're going to be late." He stood quickly, patting Lily's hock later. "Get your shoes on." Her eyes filled with tears. "Daddy, please." But he was already gone, leaving her in the silence of a room too full of toys and too empty of love. Back in the holding cell downtown, Maya sat on the narrow cot staring at the ceiling. The echoes of the courtroom still haunted her. But more than that, it was Lily's face. The way the little girl couldn't meet her eyes. The way her shoulders hunched as if she carried the weight of secrets too heavy for a child. She pressed her palms together. "God," she whispered. "Don't let her believe I left her. Don't let her think I gave up." Her grandmother's voice rose in her memory. "The truth is stubborn, child. It finds a way, even when men try to bury it." Maya clung to those words like a lifeline. She had been Lily's second mother in every way but blood. And no courtroom, no billionaire, no polished woman in pearls could erase that bond. Laura appeared at the bars carrying a folder. "We need to prepare," she said briskly, but her eyes softened when they met Maya's. "I'm going to fight for you, Maya, but you have to hold on." "I'll hold on," Maya whispered. She straightened her shoulders, though her eyes still burned. For Lily. The Hale mansion was alive that evening with the kind of order only money could buy. The staff moved quietly, setting out wine glasses and arranging the dining table under Veronica's instructions. The smell of rosemary chicken filled the air, but for Lily, seated at the far end of the table with her bunny in her lap, it might as well have been ashes. Veronica swept into the dining room in a sleek navy dress, her hair perfectly arranged, her smile polished for display. She kissed Richard lightly on the cheek before taking her seat beside him. "Everything looks perfect," she said, her tone smooth, commanding. She cast a glance toward Lily. "Eat, darling. You'll need your strength tomorrow." Lily poked at her plate with a fork, appetite gone. Her eyes wandered toward the empty space where Maya should have been, hovering in the kitchen, sneaking her extra bread rolls or whispering encouragement. The absence was a wound she couldn't name. Richard poured himself a glass of wine. His tie loosened from a long day. He was wary, but Veronica's presence pressed on him like perfume. Thick, distracting, intoxicating. "You've handled everything," he said quietly, admiring the way she carried herself. "I don't know how I'd manage without you." Veronica's eyes glinted with satisfaction. "That's because you don't need chaos anymore." "Maya brought chaos. You need order, Richard. Stability." She let her words sink in, her hand sliding across the table to rest lightly on his. "And Lily needs a mother who won't confuse her with false promises." Richard stiffened slightly, but he didn't pull his hand away. Maya was good with Lily for a time. For a time, Veronica repeated softly, her smile never faltering. "But good intentions don't erase bruises, do they?" Lily looked up then, her small voice cutting through the adult conversation. "Maya didn't do it." The table fell silent. Richard's glass paused halfway to his lips. Veronica's smile stiffened, then recovered. She leaned toward the child with the patience of a practiced actress. "Sweetheart, sometimes love makes us blind. We can care for someone, but still they can hurt us. It's better if you don't think about her anymore." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "She made heart pancakes. She read me dinosaur stories. She loves me." Richard shifted uncomfortably, his face betraying conflict. Veronica, however, reached across the table and patted Lily's hand with a firmness that silenced the child. "Eat your chicken, Lily." The little girl lowered her head, stabbing her fork into the food without eating a bite. The bunny in her lap grew damp from the tears falling onto its fur. After dinner, Veronica lingered in the study while Richard poured himself a second glass of bourbon. The fire crackled, throwing golden light across the shelves. She watched him with careful calculation. "You doubt her," Veronica said suddenly. Richard blinked, caught off guard. What, you doubt Maya? I saw it at the table. You're letting her tears in that courtroom get to you. Richard rubbed his temple. She swore to me. Veronica, she begged. It's hard to forget that. That's her strategy, Veronica said smoothly, stepping closer. Her perfume carried hints of jasmine wrapping around him. Don't forget she had every opportunity to hurt Lily when you weren't around. She could pretend to be the perfect caretaker in front of you and still harm her in private. Abusers often seem trustworthy. Richard stared into his glass, her words dripping like poison into his ears. I can't ignore 3 years of loyalty. Veronica tilted his chin toward her with a manicured hand. 3 years doesn't erase one bruise. If you hesitate, you risk your daughter's safety. Is that a gamble you're willing to take? The weight of fatherhood pressed on Richard's chest. He had already lost his wife. He could not bear to lose Lily too. Slowly he nodded, though his heart whispered something else. Meanwhile, across town, Maya sat on the cot in her holding cell. Her eyes were swollen from crying, but her hands gripped the edge of the thin blanket with new determination. She replayed Lily's voice in her head. Maya didn't do it. It had been faint, but she knew her little girl's courage. Lily still believed in her. That was enough to keep her breathing. She closed her eyes and whispered into the silence, I'll come back for you, baby, no matter what it takes. The courtroom was crowded again the next day, the hum of voices filling the air like restless bees. Reporters lined the back rows, notebooks ready, cameras waiting for the next headline to drip from the lips of a billionaire or a fallen maid. Maya sat at the defense table, her hands clasped so tightly in her lap her knuckles had turned white. The fluorescent lights above washed her skin in a harsh glow, amplifying every tear track on her face. The prosecutor began with a flourish. Your Honor, today we will present photographic evidence of the child's injury, which clearly demonstrates the violence inflicted by the defendant. Miss Maya William, he snapped his fingers, and a large screen lit up. Gasps rippled through the gallery. The image showed Lily's cheek with a dark purple bruise, spread like spilled ink across pale skin. The little girl's big blue eyes in the photo made her look even more fragile. Her lips turned down as though the world had hurt her beyond repair. Maya's breath caught in her throat. She shook her head slowly, tears welling. No, that's not real. That's not from me. Her voice cracked as she whispered. God, no. The prosecutor circled like a vulture. Miss William, will you deny you were alone with the child that evening? I was with her, Maya admitted, voice trembling. But I didn't hurt her. I made dinner. I read to her. She laughed. She was happy. The prosecutor pounced. And yet here she is, injured under your watch. Laura Bennett, her defense attorney, rose. Your Honor, we will contest the authenticity of this photo at the appropriate time. At present, this is a one-sided narrative. The judge nodded, but his eyes lingered on Maya with something between doubt and pity. The whispers began again in the crowd. Disgraceful. She looks guilty. They should have checked her background before hiring her. Maya closed her eyes, hot tears spilling down her cheeks. Every word cut deeper than the last. Then came the worst moment. The bailiff opened a side door and Lily entered, holding her bunny. She looked so small in the cavernous courtroom, her dress hanging off her shoulders, her face pale. Veronica guided her gently to the stand, her hand possessive on the child's back. The jurors softened instantly. Who could resist the sight of such innocence? Sweetheart, the prosecutor said, crouching slightly to meet Lily's eyes. Can you tell us what happened that night? Lily's lips trembled. She looked out at the room at Maya, who sat frozen, her heart in her throat. Their eyes met just for a heartbeat, and Maya mouthed silently. It's okay, tell the truth. But Veronica leaned close, whispering something into Lily's ear before stepping back. The child's gaze dropped to the floor. Maya hit me, Lily whispered. The words were so soft they barely carried, but in the silence that followed, they might as well have been thunder. Maya's body shook as if struck. No, she gasped, clutching the table. Baby, no. Don't say that. Her sobs echoed in the chamber. The judge banged his gavel. Miss William, control yourself. But Maya couldn't stop. Lee, tell them it's not true. Please don't let her make you say it. Richard Hale sat stiffly at the plaintiff's table, his face pale. He wanted to look at Maya to see if truth burned in her eyes, but Veronica's hand rested firmly on his arm, her grip saying everything words did not. The prosecutor smiled thinly. Thank you, Lily. That will be all. The child was escorted from the stand, her bunny clutched like a lifeline, tears streaking her cheeks. She did not dare look back at Maya. The courtroom erupted again, murmurs, judgment, disgust. Mia collapsed against the table, sobbing openly. her cries a raw wound on the polished floor. Laura bent close, her voice urgent. Maya, you must hold on. Don't give them the satisfaction of breaking you. Mia raised her tear-streaked face, eyes burning. They've already broken me, she whispered. At that moment, Detective Harris, seated quietly at the back of the courtroom, narrowed his eyes at the photograph still displayed on the screen. He leaned forward, studying the edges of the bruise. Something about it seemed too neat, too painted. His jaw tightened. He had seen real injuries in his 20 years on the force. This didn't look right. But for now, Maya was drowning. The tide of lies rising higher around her. And as the judge called for a short recess, the bailiff escorted her out, her sobs echoing down the marble hallway. The marble hallway outside the courtroom echoed with Maya's sobs. As the bailiff guided her back to the holding chamber, she pressed her palms over her face, ashamed that the entire city would now believe she was a monster. The whispers, the photographs, Lily's trembling voice, repeating words that weren't hers at all, pressed down like a weight she couldn't bear. Inside the holding room, Laura Bennett set her files on the table and crouched down in front of Maya. Listen to me, she said firmly, her voice low but urgent. You cannot let them see you crumble. The more emotional you get, the more you play into their hands. The jury will think you're unstable. Maya dropped her hands, her eyes bloodshot and swollen. She lied, she whispered. Lily lied because that woman told her to. I saw her whisper in her ear. I saw it. I know, Laura replied, though doubt flickered behind her eyes. But knowing isn't enough. We need proof. Maya shook her head violently. Proof. Proof. What proof is stronger than 3 years of love? I've been her mother when no one else was. I was there for every scraped knee, every fever, every nightmare. How can they not see it? Her voice cracked, breaking into sobs again. Why won't Richard see it? Laura took a slow breath. Because Veronica has her hooks in him, and because fear blinds people. A father sees bruises on his daughter's face and he panics. He listens to the first explanation that makes sense right now. That's Veronica's version, not yours. Maya slumped against the wall, her body trembling. Then I've already lost. No, Laura said sharply. Standing tall again. Not yet. Harris was in the back of the room. He's been watching. He noticed something. I could see it on his face. Maya blinked through her tears. Harris, the detective. Yes, he's not convinced. That's something. A crack in the wall. Laura gathered her files. Well, push harder tomorrow. For now you need rest because the way this is going, they'll drag you through hell before we get to the truth. Meanwhile, in the judge's chambers, Veronica sipped from a glass of sparkling water as though the trial were nothing more than a tedious social event. She crossed one leg elegantly over the other, her smile serene. Your Honor, she said smoothly. Surely it's unnecessary to prolong this. The child has spoken. The photographs are clear. For Lily's sake, it's best to close this quickly. Every additional day only reopens the wound. The judge regarded her warily, his gavel resting on the desk. Mrs. Monroe, I will not be rushed in my court. Of course not, Veronica replied sweetly, bowing her head. But think of the child. Would you want your granddaughter forced to relive trauma again and again? The judge's jaw tightened. He gave no answer, but Veronica's words hung heavy in the air. Across the city, Richard sat alone in his office at the mansion, staring at the fire flickering in the hearth. He had sent Lily to bed, her bunny still clutched tight in her arms. The silence of the house pressed in on him, broken only by the crackle of the flames. He remembered Mia's voice in the courtroom, raw and pleading, Richard, please look at me. Please. It haunted him. He rubbed his temples, whispering to himself. What if she's telling the truth? Veronica entered quietly, a vision of poise in a silk robe. She draped her arms over his shoulders, pressing a kiss to his temple. You're thinking about her again, she said softly. Richard didn't answer. She fooled you for years. Veronica continued, her tone honey, sweet but sharp underneath. You thought she loved Lily, but you don't see what I see. You don't see how dangerous women like her can be. Richard finally turned, frustration sparking in his eyes. Dangerous. She bathed my daughter, cooked her meals, stayed up all night when Lily was sick. That woman gave more of herself than I ever did. Veronica's smile tightened, but she did not falter. And that's what makes her dangerous. She wanted more than her place. She wanted your child to see her as mother. She wanted to blur the lines. Admit it, Richard. She was stealing from you. Not money, but something deeper. Don't let guilt blind you. Richard slumped back in his chair, torn in two directions. His heart whispered one thing. Veronica's voice pressed another. In the silence that followed, he took another sip of bourbon and said nothing. Back in her cell, Maya lay on the cot, staring at the ceiling. Every sound of the jail echoed around her. The clang of doors, the shuffle of footsteps, the hollow coughs of strangers. She closed her eyes and remembered Lily's small voice. Maya didn't do it. For one instant in the dining room, the child had spoken the truth. That flicker was enough to cling to. Maya clasped her hands together, whispering into the darkness, "I'll hold on for you, baby. I'll hold on." And somewhere in the city, Detective Harris sat at his desk. The photograph spread before him under the sterile light of his lamp. He zoomed in on the image, noting the uniform coloration, the odd blending at the edges. He muttered to himself, "That's not natural." His gut told him the bruise was painted, not earned. He leaned back in his chair, determination settling into his bones. Tomorrow, he would start asking questions no one wanted answered. Morning broke heavy and gray, clouds pressing low over Dallas, as though the city itself mirrored Maya's despair. From her holding cell she couldn't see the sky, but she could feel the weight of it in her chest. That day, she would not be in court. Instead, she was transported briefly to the jail's visitor area, while Laura handled procedural filings. The absence of the courtroom should have brought relief, but it didn't. It only gave her time to think, and thinking was its own prison. Outside those walls, the world had already decided her fate. In the grocery store where Maya had once taken Lily for cookies shaped like animals, customers whispered as they walked past the headlines plastered on newspapers. Billionaires made accused of child abuse at the local church. The women who used to nod kindly at Maya now murmured about her name during prayer groups. Their words not of compassion but condemnation. Mrs. Peterson, the elderly neighbor who had often watched Maya walk Lily to the playground, sat on her porch, shaking her head. "I thought she was good," she told anyone who passed by. "But you never really know, do you?" Her words carried down the block, reinforcing the verdict the community had already reached. In the marketplace, two men stood by their pickup trucks, shaking their heads as they loaded lumber. "Shameful," one muttered. "Man hires help and she turns on him like that." The other spat into the dirt. "She's exactly what people warn you about." The whispers spread like wildfire, and Maya, though she could not hear them directly, felt their sting all the same. When Laura arrived that afternoon, she carried not only her files but also the heavy truth of public opinion. "Maya," she said, setting her bag on the table in the visitor's room, "I need you to understand something. People out there, they've made up their minds. They think you're guilty. If this were a trial by community vote, you'd already be in prison." Maya's lips parted, her breath unsteady. "So that's it. All those years of love, of care, they mean nothing. They see my skin, my job, and that's enough." Laura looked at her steadily. "That's the fight, Maya. This system isn't designed to listen to women like you. But that doesn't mean truth can't get through. It just means it's harder. You have to keep standing." Maya pressed her palms flat to the table. "I can't stand much longer, Laura. Not when everyone I loved is gone. Not when Richard looks at me like I'm filth." Laura softened, her voice gentle. "Do you still love him after all this?" Maya's eyes brimmed. "I don't know if it's love, but I remember the man who grieved for his wife. The man who held Lily once when she was sick and looked so lost. I wanted to believe he could be more than his money, more than his fear. But maybe I was wrong." Laura reached across the table, her hand steady. "Don't put your faith in Richard. Put it in Lily. She's the one who matters, and she knows the truth, even if she can't say it yet." Meanwhile, at the Hale mansion, Richard sat on the porch with a cigar he didn't smoke. His mind was elsewhere, haunted by his daughter's whispered words. Maya didn't do it. He replayed it over and over. The way her lips trembled, the fear in her eyes. He wanted to dismiss it as confusion as Veronica insisted, but something gnawed at him. Veronica appeared, her hair in place, her robe tied neatly, as if even in private she could not allow imperfection. She slipped into the chair beside him, her hand resting on his knee. "You can't let doubt eat you alive, Richard," she said softly. "You saw the bruise. You heard Lily. It's over. The sooner you let go of her, the sooner Lily will heal." Richard exhaled smoke he hadn't realized he inhaled. "She begged me, Veronica. She swore on her life. That's what liars do." Veronica countered gently, her voice a velvet trap. "They swear on everything until you can't tell where truth ends and lies begin. Don't let her fool you again. You have us now. You, me and Lily. That's the family that matters." Richard nodded slowly, but inside, doubt remained, stubborn as a stone lodged in his chest. Back in her cell, Maya curled up on the cot, hugging herself against the cold. She thought of the neighbors' faces, the way they once waved when she drove Lily to school in her beat-up Chevy. She thought of the church ladies who smiled when she brought Lily to Sunday service. Now those same faces would turn away, lips curling in disgust. She whispered into the darkness, her voice breaking. They've taken everything. My job, my home, my name, and now they're trying to take her. Her tears dampened the thin pillow, but her resolve hardened beneath them. I won't let them. I'll fight even if I have to crawl through hell. Detective Harris in his modest office across town studied the photograph again. The bruise bothered him still, the edges too perfect, the shade too uniform. He picked up the phone and dialed a contact in the crime lab. I need a second opinion on a child injury photo, he said, his voice steady but laced with urgency, discreetly and fast. The case wasn't his, not officially, but something told him this was more than a maid's crime. Something here stank of manipulation, of careful staging. He jotted notes on a yellow pad. Veronica, access to child motive. His gut churned. If his hunch was right, this wasn't just about one bruise. It was about control over a child, over a billionaire, over the truth itself. As night fell, the city hummed with its usual noise. Cars rushing down freeways, neon lights glowing, people laughing in bars. But for Maya, the world had gone quiet, reduced to the echo of insults in her memory. For Richard, the world had grown heavier, the ghost of doubt pulling harder each hour. And for Lily, curled up in her big empty bed, clutching her bunny, the world was nothing but a wish, whispered into the dark, "Come back, Maya. Please come back." The bruise appeared consistent with blunt force trauma. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Laura rose for cross-examination. "Doctor, you said appeared. Are you stating definitively that it was caused by blunt force trauma?" The doctor shifted. "Well, I can't be definitive. I wasn't present when the injury occurred, so it could also be consistent with, say, a staged injury, makeup perhaps." Laura pressed. The prosecutor objected immediately. "Speculation, Your Honor." The judge sustained. Laura sat down. Frustration etched across her face. She leaned toward Maya. "We're hitting walls, but Harris called me last night. He's digging. Don't give up yet." Maya clung to those words like a lifeline. That evening, Harris drove his old Crown Victoria to a quiet suburban pharmacy on the edge of town. He flashed his badge at the wary clerk. "I need purchase records for Cosmetics Foundation Concealer last week. Name's Veronica Monroe." The clerk raised an eyebrow but pulled up the records. Sure enough, several products purchased 2 days before the bruise appeared. Harris felt his pulse quicken. It wasn't proof yet, but it was a thread in threads. When tugged hard enough, unraveled everything. Meanwhile, at the Hale mansion, Richard stood by Lily's bedroom door, listening. He heard Veronica's smooth voice. "Remember, sweetheart, you must be brave. Say what happened. Maya hurt you. That's the truth you need to tell." Lily's voice was barely a whisper. "But it's not true." Richard froze, his hand tightened on the doorknob. For a long moment, he considered bursting in, demanding answers. But then Veronica's voice turned sharp, low. "If you don't say it, Maya will be gone forever. Do you want that?" Silence. Then the small sound of Lily crying. Richard backed away from the door, his chest heavy. He told himself he hadn't heard enough to act. He told himself he was protecting his daughter by keeping peace. But deep inside, guilt carved into him like a blade. Back in her cell, Maya pressed her forehead to the cool wall, whispering into the darkness, "Lily, hold on. I'm not giving up on you." And across town, Harris looked at the receipt in his hand, the weight of it like fire in his palm. "Veronica," he muttered, "your game's about to end." The next morning, Maya sat stiffly at the defense table, her beige prison dress blending into the wooden paneling of the courtroom. She had grown quieter in recent days, her grief settling like dust in her lungs. Her eyes, though swollen, still flickered with a stubborn ember. Laura leaned in, whispering, "We might have a thread. Detective Harris is on to something." Maya turned to her, voice barely audible. "A thread won't stop them from burying me." Laura pressed her hand gently. "Sometimes a thread is all it takes to unravel a whole lie." The prosecution called another witness, Mrs. Peterson, the elderly neighbor. She shuffled to the stand, adjusting her glasses. "Yes," she said firmly. "I saw Maya walking with Lily often, but you never know what happens behind closed doors. I heard the child cry sometimes." Maya's mouth dropped open. She cried because she missed her mother. She burst out before Laura could stop her. She cried at bedtime, at storms, at scraped knees. "Not because I hurt her." The judge slammed the gavel. "One more outburst, Miss William, and you'll be held in contempt." No, the jury shifted, some frowning, others whispering. Every word seemed to tilt the scales against her. During cross-examination, Laura tried to steady the damage. "Mrs. Peterson, did you ever see Maya harm Lily?" "No," the woman admitted, her voice hesitant. "So all you know are the sounds of a grieving child." Mrs. Peterson adjusted her glasses again, fumbling. "Yes, but still." "Thank you," Laura said firmly, cutting her off. Maya sank lower in her chair. Even neighbors who once smiled at her had turned cold. Meanwhile, at the back of the courtroom, Detective Harris observed in silence. His notebook sat open on his lap, the pharmacy receipt tucked inside. He had sent the makeup samples to the lab, and though results weren't back yet, his gut screamed louder than ever. He watched Veronica. Every movement precise, every whisper calculated. When she leaned toward Richard, Harris noticed Richard's shoulders stiffen. There was a fracture forming, small but real. That afternoon, court recessed early. Outside the courthouse steps swarmed with reporters again. Veronica posed suddenly, her hand on Richard's arm, the picture of elegance. Richard answered no questions, his face stern. Lily was kept hidden from the cameras, shielded by security. Back in her cell, Maya sat with Laura in the visitor's room. "I'm losing," Maya said simply. Her voice was hollow, drained of fight. "Even if Harris finds something, no one will listen. They've already branded me guilty." Laura set her jaw. "Not everyone Harris believes. I believe in Lily deep down. She believes too." Maya's tears slipped free. "She's 5 years old. Laura, she shouldn't have to carry this weight. They've poisoned her." Laura's eyes softened. "Children are braver than we think. Sometimes braver than adults. She might surprise us yet." At the Hale mansion, Lily sat on her bed, coloring with broken crayons. Richard entered quietly, sitting beside her. "Hey, kiddo," he said softly. Lily didn't look up. She dragged the crayon harder against the paper until it snapped in two. Richard frowned. "You okay?" Her voice was small, shaky. "Daddy, I don't want to lie anymore." His heart skipped. He placed a hand on her back. "What do you mean?" She looked up at him, then eyes wet. Her bunny squeezed so tight at her tear. "Veronica says, if I don't say Maya hit me, she'll be gone forever." But Maya didn't. She never did. "I don't want to say it again." Richard froze. Every wall he built inside himself began to crack. "Sweetheart," he began, but then footsteps sounded in the hallway. Veronica's voice rang out. "Richard, is she ready for bed?" Lily's face paled with fear. She shook her head fiercely, whispering, "Don't tell." Richard rose quickly, stepping into the hall before Veronica could enter. "She's fine," he said, his voice tight. Veronica smiled, but her eyes searched his. "Good. She needs rest. Tomorrow's important." Richard nodded. But as he turned away, Lily's words echoed in his ears. "I don't want to lie anymore." That night, Detective Harris returned to his office. The phone on his desk buzzed. It was Charlie from the lab. "You were right," Charlie said. "Traces of cosmetic foundation and adhesive particles on the bruise photo. This wasn't blunt force trauma. It was painted. Someone staged this." Harris's pulse thundered. "That's the proof," he said. "That's the break we needed." He leaned back in his chair, exhaling hard. For the first time in weeks, he felt the scales shift. Maya wasn't alone anymore. The thread was tugged, and the fabric of Veronica's lie was starting to unravel. The courthouse felt colder that morning, as if the air itself had grown tired of carrying so many lies. Maya sat at the defense table, her hands folded tightly together, her shoulders hunched beneath the weight of the accusations. Her face bore the exhaustion of sleepless nights. But her eyes held a fragile spark, something that refused to die even as the walls closed in around her. Laura Bennett leaned close, whispering, "Harris has something. He's waiting for the right moment." Maya's voice was a whisper. "Right moment. I don't have any moments left." The trial resumed with a ruthless rhythm. The prosecution paraded another witness, a former housemaid who had worked briefly at the Hale estate before quitting. She spoke with feigned authority, claiming she had always suspected Maya had a temper. The jury shifted, murmurs buzzing like flies. Maya's fists clenched. She wanted to shout lies, but Laura pressed a calming hand on her arm. "Let it go, she's rehearsed. We'll cut her down and cross." When Laura questioned the witness, she exposed cracks. The maid had only worked 2 weeks, had never actually seen Maya lose her temper, and admitted her information came from what Veronica told her. Still, the damage was done. The jury had heard the words temper and child abuse too many times. Seeds of doubt had been sown. During recess, Maya sat alone on a bench in the holding area, the buzz of fluorescent lights humming overhead. She dropped her face into her hands. "They've already buried me," she whispered. Laura sat beside her. "Don't say that. Harris found cosmetic traces in the bruise. It's real evidence, Maya. It could flip everything." Maya's head snapped up, hope flickering. "Then why hasn't he spoken?" "Because timing matters. If we play it too soon, The prosecution will bury it under procedure. We need to land the punch when they least expect it. Maya stared at her lawyer, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. I don't know how much longer I can wait. Meanwhile, at the Hale mansion, Lily sat at the breakfast table, untouched cereal soggy in milk. Richard stood at the counter nursing black coffee. Veronica moved gracefully through the kitchen, her robe tied neatly, her tone light as though the trial were a trivial inconvenience. Big day today, she said cheerfully. If all goes well, we'll finally have closure. Lily's eyes shot up, filled with panic. Richard glanced at her uneasy. It means this will all be over soon. But Maya. Lily's lip trembled. She'll be gone. Veronica crouched beside her, tucking a strand of hair behind Lily's ear. Her smile was soft but her eyes sharp. Sweetheart, you need to be strong. Sometimes bad people leave, and that's for the best. Maya isn't who you thought she was. Lily jerked away, her tiny voice rising. She is. She loves me. Richard froze, coffee cup suspended midair. The truth rang in his daughter's cry, slicing through the haze Veronica had built. His chest tightened, but before he could speak, Veronica straightened. Her tone clipped. Richard, don't let her confuse herself. She's 5. She doesn't understand manipulation. Lily's tears spilled over. She grabbed her bunny and bolted upstairs. The slam of her bedroom door echoed through the mansion. Richard stared after her, guilt clawing at his gut. Veronica sighed, pressing her hand on his arm. Children always resist at first, but she'll thank us one day, he nodded numbly. But Lily's words, she loves me, refused to leave his mind. Back in the courtroom, the prosecution closed its arguments with theatrical precision. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you have seen the photographs, heard the testimony. The evidence is clear. Maya William betrayed the trust of this family. She is guilty. Maya's heart hammered as the judge turned to Laura. Defense may present its final case tomorrow. Laura squeezed Maya's hand. Tomorrow, she whispered. That's when Harris will come through. That evening, Detective Harris sat in his car outside the Hale estate, a folder of lab reports on the passenger seat. The words glared at him: cosmetic foundation, adhesive particles, injury not consistent with trauma. It was the proof he needed, but he knew the stakes. If he moved too fast, Veronica could bury it under her influence. If he waited too long, Maya would be condemned. He watched the lights flicker in the mansion's windows. A silhouette appeared. Richard, pacing alone in his study. Harris lit a cigarette, exhaling smoke into the cool night. Time's running out, he muttered. Tomorrow everything changes. Inside her cell, Maya curled on the cot, whispering into the darkness. Lily, baby, if you can't speak tomorrow, I'll speak for both of us. I won't let them take us down without the truth being heard. She closed her eyes. The image of Lily's tear-streaked face burned into her soul. Tomorrow would decide everything. The air inside the Dallas County Courthouse was suffocating, thick with anticipation. Every seat was filled, every reporter ready with pens poised and cameras trained. It was the day of reckoning. The moment when the judge would hear final arguments and the jury would carry Maya Williams' fate in their hands. Maya sat at the defense table, her beige prison dress hanging loosely on her shoulders, her eyes rimmed red from another sleepless night. She clasped her hands together, so tightly her knuckles turned white. Beside her, Laura Bennett whispered, "Remember, don't speak unless I tell you. Let me carry this." But Maya's chest was already heaving, a storm raging inside. Her thoughts weren't on Laura or even the jury. They were on Lily. She pictured her little girl curled in bed, clutching her bunny, whispering to the dark that Maya didn't do it. The judge entered, gavel striking. Court is in session. The prosecutor rose first, confident, his voice ringing clear. Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen, the case is simple. The child has spoken. The bruise has been shown. The testimony is consistent. Maya William betrayed the trust of this family. For Lily's safety, justice demands conviction. Maya's breath came faster. Betrayal, safety. The words twisted into knives. She gripped the edge of the table, fighting back the scream clawing at her throat. Laura stood next, papers trembling in her hands, though her voice steadied as she spoke. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been shown photographs. You've heard words coached into a frightened child, but you have not heard the truth. Maya William has cared for Lily Hale for 3 years with nothing but love. Not one credible witness has seen her raise a hand to that child. What you are asked to believe is a story stitched together by assumption and fear. The prosecutor objected. The judge allowed her to continue. Laura's voice sharpened. This is not justice. It is convenience. It is easier to blame the maid than to question the wealthy. But easier does not mean right. The courtroom stirred, whispers rising. Maya's chest swelled with a fragile hope. Then came the moment that broke her. The prosecutor called Lily to the stand. The child entered slowly, her bunny clutched to her chest. She climbed onto the witness chair, her legs dangling. Her eyes found Maya for just a moment, wide, wet, pleading. The prosecutor knelt, his voice soft, patronizing. "Lily's sweetheart, can you tell us again what happened that night?" Lily's lips trembled. She looked at Veronica first, who sat in the gallery with perfect poise. Her smile subtle but commanding. Then she looked at Richard, his face pale, his eyes dark with conflict. Finally her gaze drifted to Maya. Maya mouthed silently. "Tell the truth, it's okay." The room held its breath. Lily's voice cracked. Her bunny trembled in her arms. "I don't want to lie anymore." Gasps filled the courtroom. The prosecutor froze. Veronica's smile vanished. The judge leaned forward. "Child, speak clearly." Lily's tears spilled. "Maya didn't hurt me. She never hurt me. Veronica told me to say she did. She said if I didn't, Maya would go away forever." Silence. Absolute deafening silence. Then chaos. Reporters scribbled furiously. Spectators erupted in shouts, and the prosecutor sputtered, "Objection!" "This is Coach." Maya fell to her knees, sobbing openly. Her hands clasped in prayer. "Thank you, God, thank you." Her voice cracked into the stillness. "I swear to God, I never harmed that child." The judge banged his gavel repeatedly, calling for order, but nothing could silence the truth that had finally broken through the lies. Richard stared at his daughter, his world collapsing, his face blanched as realization struck. He had condemned the wrong woman, betrayed the one person who had given his daughter unconditional love. And across the gallery, Veronica's mask slipped. Her smile vanished. Her posture stiffened, her eyes darting as if searching for an exit. Maya lifted her tear-streaked face to Lily, whispering, "I'm here, baby. I'll never leave you." The gavel slammed against wood, echoing like thunder in the packed courtroom. "Order," the judge barked, but the crowd was already electrified. Reporters scrambled. Jurors exchanged wide-eyed glances, and every camera lens focused on the small figure on the witness stand, Lily Hale clutching her bunny, trembling, but unbroken. Veronica's hands tightened around her purse, her knuckles pale. She leaned forward, her voice sharp but low, hissing toward Richard. "Do something. Don't let her undo everything." But Richard was frozen. His daughter's words replayed in his mind. "I don't want to lie anymore." Each syllable struck him like a hammer, breaking apart the narrative he had clung to. He glanced toward Maya, crumpled in sobs, her lips moving in prayer. The sight seared him with guilt so fierce it made him nauseous. The prosecutor scrambled to regain footing. "Your Honor," he stammered. "The child is clearly confused. She's been manipulated." "Objection." Laura cut in, her voice sharp as glass. "The only manipulation here has been from the plaintiff's companion, Veronica Monroe. This child has found the courage to speak truth, and I will not let it be drowned out." The judge's gavel struck again. "Nof. The child has made a serious statement. Court will recess while this is investigated." The bailiff escorted Lily off the stand, but before leaving she looked back at Maya, her small voice breaking through the chaos. "Don't cry, Maya, I told them now." Maya's tears flowed harder, her lips trembling with a whisper. "My brave girl." In the hallway, reporters swarmed. "Veronica, care to comment?" "Mr. Hale, did you know your daughter was pressured?" The frenzy was unstoppable. Veronica kept her head high, forcing a thin smile, but her eyes were daggers. Richard shielded Lily, his arm around her, his silence louder than words. Inside the defense room, Maya collapsed into Laura's arms. "She did it," she sobbed. "She told them." Laura steadied her. "Yes, but this isn't over. We need corroboration. Proof that the bruise was staged. Harris is close. We'll use his findings to nail Veronica to the wall." That evening, the Hale mansion felt less like a home and more like a battlefield. Richard sat in his study,